What if the thing you're calling a burden is actually your greatest ally in disguise? What if that persistent gnawing frustration isn't there to ruin your peace, but to wake you up from a life half-lived? Be honest. How long have you been carrying that low-grade dissatisfaction, hoping it'll resolve itself, blaming your circumstances, blaming time, blaming luck? You keep moving, yes, but something in you knows it's not forward. Let me ask you bluntly, what are you frustrated about right now? Is it your job, your marriage, your lack of progress, discipline, purpose? Think carefully. That ache you've been trying to suppress? Maybe it's not just mood. Maybe it's a message. And maybe the reason it hurts so consistently is because you keep ignoring it. This isn't just about being stuck. It's about a kind of silent despair that comes when your outer life no longer matches your inner convictions. When the things you're doing every day don't resonate with who you know, deep down you were meant to become. And yet, you stay. You endure. You justify. And you hope. But hope, without action, becomes self-betrayal. That's the discomfort I want to confront you with. Because your frustration is not random. It's not bad luck. And it's not someone else's fault. It is, in many cases, the most honest part of your soul, still trying to get your attention. You're not watching this by accident. There's a reason this topic caught your eye today. Maybe it's time to stop numbing the pain and start listening to what it's been trying to say. Because here's the truth. The longer you ignore your frustration, the more it hardens into bitterness. And bitterness kills far more potential than failure ever will. This conversation will not offer shallow comfort, but it will offer clarity. And if you're willing to confront what hurts, you might just discover what heals. So before we go any further, pause and tell me in the comments, what's the one frustration that just won't go away? Name it. Own it. That's the first step. And if you're new here, subscribe. You'll want to walk this whole path with us. You wake up, and it's there. That familiar tension. The sense that something's off but not loud enough to scream. Just enough to linger. You go through the motions, emails, meetings, traffic, small talk, but under it all is a quiet ache. This isn't what I imagined. Maybe you've tried to rationalize it. It's just a phase. Everyone feels this way. I should be grateful. And yet, the dissatisfaction persists. You've hit goals before, haven't you? You've achieved things that once felt impossible. So why does it still feel like something's missing? Let's name it. Frustration isn't always explosive. It's often subtle. A simmering discontent that haunts ordinary days. You're not miserable, just not alive. You're restless in your own skin. And that's precisely where many of us live, between the pressure to settle and the pull to become. Think about these common places where frustration thrives. Maybe it's your career. You work hard, but there's no real growth, no alignment with what matters. You feel like a cog, not a contributor. Or maybe it's in your relationships, where conversations feel scripted, connection feels transactional, and you long for depth you can't seem to reach. Or maybe your frustration is with yourself. You know you're capable of more, but your habits don't reflect that. You start things you don't finish. You speak about change but don't act. And each time you break a promise to yourself, your frustration compounds, not just with life, but with who you're becoming. This is the part most people skip. The honest recognition of where they actually are. Not where they pretend to be, not where they hope to be by now, but where they are today. That's where change begins. You're not alone in this. Frustration is a shared human experience. And if you feel it deeply, that's not weakness. That's evidence that something in you is still alive, still unwilling to settle. So here's a question worth wrestling with. In which area of your life do you feel most stuck, and why do you think that is? Don't rush to fix it. Just feel it. Identify it. Let the discomfort rise. Only then can it start to lead you somewhere new. When frustration hits, most of us do the same thing. We run. We numb. We complain. We look for someone or something to blame. It's almost instinctive. The discomfort is so sharp, so immediate, that we want it gone now. And in that rush to escape, we make the most costly mistake. We silence the one signal that could have set us free. Think about it. When was the last time you were truly frustrated? What did you do with it? Maybe you vented to a friend. Maybe you scrolled for hours. Maybe you drank, ate, binged, or worked until the feeling dulled. But did you ever listen to it? Most people don't. Most people treat frustration like a defect to be patched, not a messenger to be understood. We slap positive affirmations on top of deep wounds. We distract ourselves with novelty or busyness. We rationalize, it's not that bad. But all of this is a subtle form of denial, and denial always prolongs the pain. There's a harsh truth here. Blaming others, circumstances, or even fate might feel momentarily relieving, but it robs you of your agency. You can't grow from what you refuse to own. And every time you outsource responsibility, you delay the transformation that frustration is trying to provoke in you. St. Thomas Aquinas wrote that disorder in the soul is often experienced through passions out of harmony with reason. Frustration is one of those passions. It signals a discrepancy, not just between what you want and what is, but between who you are and who you could be. To ignore that is to ignore the very structure of your inner life. Here's what you need to hear. Your frustration isn't the problem. Your refusal to engage with it is. Until you stop reacting impulsively and start responding intentionally, you'll stay trapped in the same cycles. Different job, same emptiness. Different partner, same arguments, different goals, same disillusionment. So ask yourself, when I get frustrated, what's my first move? Do I numb it, blame others, distract myself? Or do I pause and examine what it's really about? Your answer might explain why you're still stuck. And the good news? That pattern can change, but only if you're willing to stop treating frustration like a curse and start treating it like a compass. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Frustration isn't your enemy. It's your inner life begging for alignment. It's not there to torment you. It's there to interrupt you, to shake you out of a pattern that no longer serves the person you're called to become. That ache you feel? It's not a punishment. It's a wake-up call. We've been conditioned to believe that pain is always a problem. That discomfort means something's wrong. But what if instead it's a sign that something finally wants to be made right? Viktor Frankl said that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. Frustration then isn't just suffering, it's untranslated meaning. It's a kind of spiritual alarm clock. It goes off when your life is out of sync with your values, your goals, or your conscience. And like any alarm, you can hit snooze. You can ignore it. But the longer you delay, the louder it becomes. And eventually, it stops being a whisper and becomes a scream. Frustration forces us into confrontation with our illusions, our excuses, and our stagnation. And that's why most people hate it. Because deep down we know if we really listen to our frustration, we'd have to change. We'd have to let go of comfort. We'd have to take responsibility. We'd have to grow up. And that's hard. But it's also necessary. Because no real transformation happens without friction. St. Augustine wrote that our hearts are restless until they rest in what is true. Frustration is that restlessness. It's the soul knocking on the door of your attention saying, "This isn't it. Keep going." So let's reframe the whole thing. Frustration is feedback. Pure, raw, honest feedback. It tells you where you're not aligned, where you're not honest, where you're not free. It points to places inside you that are still waiting to be claimed. You can curse it, you can numb it, or you can listen. So here's the reflection for today. What is the one area in your life where frustration keeps returning? And what might it be asking you to finally face? Don't silence it. Sit with it. Translate it. Because sometimes the most painful truths are the ones most desperate to set you free. Frustration doesn't come from nowhere. It isn't random. It grows in the space between what is and what was expected. At its core, frustration is the collision between your present reality and the story you told yourself about how life was supposed to be by now. Maybe you thought you'd be further along, more accomplished, more fulfilled, more loved. And when reality doesn't match the image, a gap forms. That gap is where frustration lives. It festers there between the dream and the reality, the desire and the discipline, the should be and the what is. But let's look deeper. That tension isn't meaningless. It's a signal. That inner dissonance? It means something in you still believes in possibility. You're frustrated because you haven't given up. There's still a vision of who you could become, buried maybe beneath fatigue or cynicism, but still alive. This is what most people miss. Frustration is evidence of potential. It's proof that something inside you has not yet been expressed. It's the soul's way of saying, there's more in you. You're not done here. It reveals a latent power, a dormant capacity that hasn't found its form in the world yet. The philosopher Julian Maria said that man is a project, not a fixed being, but a becoming. You are always in the process of becoming someone. Frustration reveals that your becoming has stalled, that you're caught in contradiction, that your choices no longer match your aspirations. And instead of facing that tension, we often lie to ourselves. We say we're fine. We say it's not the right time. We say we're too old, too busy, too tired. But beneath all of that is the truth. We're afraid. Afraid that the work required to close the gap will demand too much. Afraid to confront how far we've drifted from the life we once envisioned. But here's the thing. Acknowledging the gap is the first step to closing it. Naming the contradiction is what allows us to begin resolving it. So ask yourself now, where in your life is there a gap between who you are and who you feel called to be? And instead of escaping it, can you sit with it long enough to hear what it's pointing toward? Because in that tension lies your next chapter. Frustration has a voice, but most of us never learn to listen. Instead, we interpret it as failure, as weakness, as proof that we're broken. But what if you could translate it? What if every frustration carried a message? Clear, urgent, personal. Maybe your frustration is saying, you're playing small. You've settled into routines that protect your comfort but betray your calling. You're staying quiet in places where you should speak. You're shrinking when life is asking you to expand. Or maybe it's saying, you're lying to yourself. You're holding on to a relationship, a job, a goal that no longer fits. You tell yourself it'll get better, that you just need more time. But deep down, you know the truth. This isn't working. And the longer you deny it, the louder the frustration grows. Sometimes frustration whispers, you're not being honest about your limits. You say yes to too much. You perform strength while privately unraveling. Your frustration then becomes exhaustion in disguise, a plea to realign your life with what actually matters. Or perhaps the message is simpler. You've stopped growing. You're coasting, existing instead of evolving. You've avoided the difficult conversations, the necessary risks, the disciplines that build real change. And now your inner life is restless, because it knows you were meant for more than this. These are not criticisms, they're invitations. Your frustration isn't trying to shame you, it's trying to awaken you. Viktor Frankl once said that what man needs is not a tensionless state, but the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal. Frustration emerges when you've either abandoned that goal or never clarified it in the first place. So what to do? Start listening. When frustration rises, don't suppress it. Ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? Then write it down. Not in vague terms, but clearly. Is it showing you your complacency, your self-sabotage, your disconnection from purpose? Interpret it like a language, because that's what it is. A coded signal from the deepest parts of you, asking for your attention. And here's the question for today. If your frustration could speak with perfect clarity, what would it say? And are you brave enough to listen without defensiveness, without running? Because the moment you hear it clearly is the moment you can begin to change. There comes a moment, often quiet, rarely convenient, when you stand at a crossroads. Frustration has brought you here, not as a punishment, but as a guide. And now, you have to choose. Will you confront what your life is trying to show you? Or will you go back to pretending? This is the moment of truth. The moment where no new distraction will suffice. No more clever excuses. No more blaming the timing, the system, the people around you. The frustration has done its job. It's exposed the fault line. Now the question is, will you step into it and grow? Or will you seal it back up and call it fate? Let's not romanticize this. Change is hard. Growth is painful. Choosing to evolve costs comfort. That's why so many settle. They choose numbness over aliveness, familiar suffering over unfamiliar strength. But the cost of staying the same? That's a slow death, a corrosion of the soul, a quiet betrayal you feel every day when you look in the mirror. St. Thomas Aquinas taught that the will must be moved by something greater than itself. Frustration, when rightly understood, becomes that mover. It becomes the pressure that demands action, not for the sake of activity, but for the sake of truth. Because living in contradiction is unbearable for the soul. So you're here now, facing this inner bifurcation. One path leads back to resignation, to tolerating a life that doesn't reflect who you are or what you long to become. The other path? It leads to confrontation, to responsibility, to movement, and eventually, transformation. But you must choose. Not tomorrow. Not when it feels easier. Now. Because every day you delay, you reinforce the idea that your frustration is something to survive, not something to learn from. And that is how mediocrity wins. Not through failure, but through inertia. So ask yourself with brutal honesty, am I willing to keep living the same pattern knowing it won't resolve itself? Or am I finally ready to change? Not perfectly, but decisively. Because here's the truth. Your frustration is not permanent, but your refusal to act can be. This is the turning point, don't waste it. Now comes the part most people never reach. Transformation. You've named the frustration. You've listened to its message. You felt the weight of the choice before you. But without action, all of it dissolves into yet another emotional high. One more false start in a life already filled with unfinished attempts. So how do you turn frustration into something that fuels you instead of consuming you? There's a simple 3-step method. Simple, but not easy. First, identify the trigger. Every frustration has a root. Is it the sense of being overlooked? Is it the gap between your ideals and your habits? Is it a fear of wasting your life? Write it down. Not vaguely, concretely. Frustration loses half its power the moment it becomes visible. Second, confront the truth. What is the real reason you're frustrated? Not the surface complaint, but the deeper wound. Are you afraid to risk because you don't trust yourself? Are you avoiding change because you don't believe you deserve better? This is where courage begins. Not in grand gestures, but in private honesty. Third, create a plan of motion. Not a dream, not a 10-year vision board. A concrete, small, repeatable act that pushes against the frustration. If you feel stuck in your career, set a daily learning goal. If you're frustrated with your discipline, build a morning routine. If it's relational, have the hard conversation. Movement is medicine. Action is alignment. Viktor Frankl believed that man finds meaning not in pleasure or power, but in responsibility. That's the shift. Stop waiting for the world to fix what only your soul can. Your frustration is not a flaw. It's fuel, but only if you burn it with intention. This isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. 1,000 tiny acts of realignment are what will rebuild a life of integrity. You don't need to feel ready. You need to begin. So here's the challenge. What's one frustration that you can turn into a daily practice starting today? Just one. Choose it. Commit to it. Let it transform from an emotional weight into a form of sacred discipline. Because in the end, frustration isn't fire meant to destroy, it's fire meant to forge. Use it. Enough thinking, enough talking. You've heard the message. You've felt it resonate. Now it's time to act. Not tomorrow. Not when life gets quieter. Now. Because the truth is, if you don't do something different today, nothing will be different tomorrow. So here's what I want you to do, right now. Choose one frustration. Just one. The one that keeps circling back no matter how much you try to avoid it. The one you've been pushing aside, rationalizing, silencing. Write it down, not in your head. On paper. Be specific. What is frustrating you, and what do you think it's trying to show you? Next, interpret it. Give it a voice. If this frustration could speak to you, what would it say? You're hiding. You're playing small. you're neglecting what matters. Let it be raw. Let it be uncomfortable. That's how you know it's true. Now the most important part, act. Not someday, today. What is one decision you can make that aligns with what your frustration is revealing? Maybe it's setting a boundary. Maybe it's applying for something that scares you. Maybe it's deleting the thing that's distracting you. Maybe it's simply admitting, for the first time, what you really want. You don't need more inspiration. You need movement. The kind that costs you something. The kind that says, I refuse to live stuck. Because let's be honest, your life won't change because you understood this message. It will only change when you respond to it. And don't do this silently. Share it in the comments. Declare what your frustration is and what it's calling you to do. Not to impress anyone, but to make a vow to yourself. To create accountability. To step into integrity. Julian Maria said that to exist is to project oneself. Frustration is the soul's protest against a life where your deepest projections are being neglected. You can't afford to keep silencing that protest. So here's the question that demands your courage. What frustration are you turning into action today? Don't wait for clarity. Don't wait to feel ready. Make the move. And let this be the moment you stopped running and started becoming. Here's what no one told you. Your frustration is not a detour. It's a direction. It's not here to make you bitter. It's here to make you brave. And the longer you treat it like an enemy, the more you miss the very thing it came to offer. A mission. Every meaningful transformation begins with discomfort. The tension you feel inside. The misalignment. The ache. The restlessness. That's the ground zero of all growth. Not comfort. Not clarity. Frustration. It's the soul's way of saying, there's something here that needs to be redeemed. Look back on your life. The seasons that shaped you most, were they not the ones where you felt the most pressure to change? To face yourself? To let go of what was no longer true? That's not coincidence. That's how formation works. Fire doesn't destroy what's essential. It burns away the excess. What remains is what's real. So when you feel frustrated, ask a better question. Not, how do I make this go away? But, what am I being called to become through this? Because every frustration contains a hidden demand, a summons. It's asking you to grow, to act, to evolve. Not later, not ideally, but concretely. You may not have chosen the frustration, but you can choose what it does to you. Will it harden you? Or will it refine you? Will it pull you into resentment? Or into responsibility? St. Thomas Aquinas taught that the human person is not fully alive until their actions are in harmony with their highest end. Frustration is the signal that this harmony is off, and it invites you, not forces you, invites you, to restore it. So here's the final truth. Every frustration is a mission in disguise. You can accept it or ignore it, but it won't stay silent. It will keep knocking, louder, sharper, more insistently, until one day you either obey it or are consumed by it. The choice is yours. If this message hit you where it needed to, don't let it fade. Share in the comments. What mission has your frustration been hiding? What are you being called to do, change, become, and if you're ready to walk deeper into this kind of truth, subscribe, because this is just the beginning.